Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Hey everybody, welcome to an episode and welcome to our 14 people who are in different countries. I don't know if we have more than one person in 14
shout out to the international
countries,
audience.
but shout out to our international audience that we have learned that
There's
we
at
have.
least one in all of those countries, including the U.S. At least one person.
Yeah. It's exciting. I wish we knew the states. We don't know. Do we know that? Can we find that?
No, not the states. We know
bummer.
the country statistics, but not the states.
All right. If you are
Hello,
outside
Canada.
of Kentucky, find us on Instagram at Hort Culture Podcast and comment what state that you are in our post. How about
anyway, if you have a more specific geographical location you'd like to give us for where you're at, in your own country.
If you want to give us your own personal address.
Josh has been collecting
GPS
social security
data.
numbers just as a hobby.
Longitude and latitude, whatever.
Stamps, but it didn't
you know
have the
what?
same
Go ahead
thrill.
and just send us a check. That would be great. Thank you.
Just the vital stats.
We're happy that people out there listen and like to hear us talk about whatever
love
it is
Brett's
we talk about.
Voice, his deep voice, his radio voice.
I wouldn't say my voice is that
on
deep.
tonight's episode
What's happening here?
Hort Culture.
All of a sudden, we're all going octave deeper. What do you mean, Alexis?
It's fine. It's fine.
It's
I don't know.
okay.
I just assume every man when he enters the phone or answers the phone, his voice drops an octave. So
It depends on the stress level. Mine actually goes higher. It goes the other
right.
way.
Yours does go higher.
It does go
It does
higher.
when you talk to me. So I guess that means I stress you out.
Yeah.
Our
It's
friend,
resonating.
again.
It's a harmonic vibration. It's
just
fine.
slowly over the podcast, voice gets higher.
we tease our friend Sean saying that he has his extension voice because he'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
going along and kind of talking like this, and then if somebody has a question, he'll be like, "Well, the cultivars we use out here at the farm are."
I have my customer service voice. That's for sure. I think we
Give
all
it
do.
to us. What's the difference?
Hi, this is Alexis. How can I help you?
Oh,
That's not the voice I get. Hey, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need?
What do you need? What do you want?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, what do you want? I'm
I
busy
feel like
today.
she answers when I call.
I
What?
want it in bullet format. Do not give me full sentences, people.
Right.
Could this not have been a text?
have a good time.
Yeah.
I
Why
swear to
use
God,
lot
if this
word
could have been
when
an
few
email.
word do trick.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So what's
Anyways.
going on right now in like extension office landia?
Yeah.
It's October.
What kind of stuff are y'all doing? There's
All
like-
the things. Getting ready for winter program. And and I've had surprisingly a lot of disease questions here lately, and it's late season disease questions, but I guess that may be a function of more people with protected ag or high tunnels, low
If
tunnels.
you don't
or
have powdery
whatnot.
mildew, do you even grow things? I mean,
No, or
that's-
you're just trying to hide it. Yeah, my zinnias succumbed to that long ago.
I've been doing. We just had a beginner farmer program last night, so I'm really excited about that and how that's going. And then we've got a beekeeping series that's been going
Beekeeping
on.
classes are coming up. Yeah.
so that's gonna continue on, and yeah, really this time of year is just kind of everything falls into place that you put into place.
Oh, because
back
it's
in
fall,
early
right?
spring.
That's why
Falling
they did that.
I think of it as
into
autumning
place.
into place.
Autumning
Yeah.
into
Automatically.
for all of our
I don't know how to make that work. Sorry.
British followers out there. It's all.
Aluminium and then into place.
Yeah. And this is a point, truly a serious point. In the future, we're going to try to do a better job of keeping particularly folks in Kentucky up to date. I think we talked about that, didn't we, guys? As far as like statewide or regional events coming up, because there's so many going on all around the state. And I, for one, have to admit that on this platform, this podcast, I have not been good about bringing up like all of these awesome programs that I know that's going on both within our organization and other organizations that we work closely with. There's always something great going on. And that's a common question I get at the office because people know when winter comes on that we do a lot of winter series programs and into early spring. I mean, that's particularly heavy time for programming. So we're going to try to do a little bit more of that, I think, in the future to kind of keep the listeners up to date, particularly those listeners that are a little bit closer and a little bit more local here in Kentucky.
Yeah, there's a lot of like November through March, I would say, is kind of like conference season, and some of those are online. Some of those are, in person, and so we'll try and keep you updated. Really quick, I've got some pulled up right here, and these are all on
Awesome.
Zoom. So if you're interested in them, reach out to us, and we'll send you a link to them. But we have something called Horticulture Webinar Wednesdays, and they're
Mhm.
really short, like less than 30 minutes usually. October 18th, and these are all at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so October 18th is Tree ID in the winter, and so we'll learn about
Oh,
buds and stuff like that, and how to
Nice.
do
Winter
that.
botany.
And then
learn
October
about buds
20
with your buds.
buds with the buds. October 25th is holiday cactus. So if you have Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter cactus, you want to know
Always
how to
lots of
take care of it
questions on
better.
that.
Mm.
Those are some coming up. And then there is one in November. And hold on, let me open my calendar to make sure I
These
don't.
are all the horticulture webinar Wednesdays.
And these
Those
are all
were,
open, correct,
yeah,
Alexis? Like an open
those
link?
are open to
Yeah.
anybody is anywhere. It's an open link, and you just need to
Mhm.
follow it. And
Have the
then
link?
there is one November 6th, which is our webinar for our cut flower short courses, and we're going to have
Mm.
Lindsay Beal with Wild Root Flower Company in Ohio, and she's going to be talking about kind of budgeting with an accounting for flower farms, so very flower farm specific. So if that's something that you want to do, again, that's free to sign up. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, but that is 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you are interested in any of that, reach out to us, and we will get you a link to get signed up for free on those. So
And
thanks.
the cut flower short course and some of the other trainings we've done in the past. I say we when other people besides me, but we're all a team. Especially when I get a piece of the credit.
Amen.
Or no
So
credit at all.
they're available on the CCD, the Center for Crop Diversification YouTube channel. So that
Mhm.
our handle everywhere for that. First, the CCD is at CCDUKY, so Instagram, Facebook, and then also on YouTube. We have a couple of the cut flower short courses that are up in the tens of thousands of views
Nice.
since they've been posted. Very popular, sharing perspectives from famous people in that niche world of. I find that myself. I'm like, in the bonsai world, there's like these celebrities, and it's
Yeah.
like 8,000
Mhm.
total people know who they are in the world, but
But they
Right.
are
Might
really
as well be
important to
Tom
8,000
Cruise.
people.
The
yeah,
the
exactly.
focus is intense on those
That's
people, yes.
exactly right.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, what we're going to get into, speaking of flowers and fall things
And
and
celebrities.
aliens and all that, and celebrities, obviously, talking about some fall planting. So we've kind of already hit on this really specifically with talking about fall cover crops, but we've also talked about like garlic as a fall planted crop. So today we're kind of leaning in more to the ornamental side. So, spring flowering bulbs that you're going to plant right now, trees and shrubs, just overall this idea that fall is a planting time in the state, at least in the state of Kentucky, and a lot of people that are in this kind of zone 6, zone 7 area of the USDA planting chart. For most of us, it's going to be that. Now, if you're much more north than us, spring is definitely our ideal time, except for, again, those bulbs and things. But here we like to tell people to plant their trees and their like woody perennials, shrubs, things like that in the fall. So that always surprises people, I think, because spring just seems like an obvious time to be planting.
And I've always wondered why, and particularly in our area, why there's not more deciduous trees available at, the box store
Mm-hmm.
nurseries in the fall. But that's typically when you can get some really good deals because they're clearing inventory, I
Hmm.
think, to make room for Christmas
Oh, I'm
decorations,
going
as
to the
far as
box
I can
stores
tell.
after
But
this.
it's a
I'm
great
Yeah.
time
excited.
to pick up sales and put those in the
Mm-hmm.
ground at a great time of the year. So,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, I love it, but I'm just surprised that there's not, I guess, more wide availability of some of these this plant stocks at the time of year when they should go in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
there's more available in the spring.
Yeah, it is kind of counterintuitive or strange just because, I think the biggest fruit tree planting I'd ever been a part of was like somebody had gone to a couple of big box stores and basically they were clearing everything out. So they got like a
Mm-hmm.
great deal, but it all just, I mean, it's when they were supposed to be planted
Mhm.
anyway. It was kind of
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Yeah, and here folks are trying to get rid of inventory instead of providing a wider selection
New
of
inventory.
inventory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
I have found that the local nurseries
Hmm.
not the big box stores, but the local
Mhm.
nurseries have been doing a better job. I was at a local nursery the other day, and they had just got a fresh shipment of woody shrubs and
Awesome.
small, like container sized trees in for
Hmm.
this purpose. And I was like, thank you for doing that. So we're pushing that. And for those of you who are like, why do I want to plant in fall? It seems so counterintuitive. So for your trees, your shrubs, at least in our area, we want them to settle in and be able to put in roots while the soil is cool, while we're getting hopefully some precipitation. And then when we get those spring rains, leading us into summer, they can really get established before the heat and the drought of summer hits. They
Hmm.
roots, we always say trees kind of go dormant, right? Our deciduous trees at least are going dormant, but they're not working, right? They're just not,
Mhm.
they don't have above ground stuff. So they store a lot of energy throughout the season by photosynthesizing. They drop those leaves and then they push that energy out into root development and doing a lot of those things underground at a
Mhm.
much slower rate than they would if it was warm, but they are focused, they are still working at that time.
And
Yeah.
hopefully during the fall, I mean, you mentioned it, is hopefully they have a more available moisture to take advantage of. Now, that's not always
Hmm.
the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go through extended dry spells in the fall. And I tell people when they're seeding lawns or planting trees, you have to take that into account. It's more for like, I mean, we're towards the end of the lawn seeding window now, but it matters more for like things like that than it does for trees. Trees typically you can put in the ground, mulch heavy, and just remember that if we go through a really long period in the wintertime, that it may be necessary to water even a
Mm-hmm.
deciduous tree, especially evergreens. If you decide to do that, it's not my favorite time in the fall to do an evergreen in planted, but just remember that it may take some water in the fall, even though the plant is not a lot's going on with the plant, like Alexis said. Don't forget to water. If you go through like 4 to 6 weeks of just absolute drought, that plant, as
Even if
long
it's
as the
cold.
ground's not
Yeah.
frozen and you can get your water hose out. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's not very convenient, and very rarely have I ever seen homeowners do that. Go out when it's kind of chilly out, 30s and 40s, particularly like 40-degree days is a good day to kind of go out and water if your tree's not gotten any water. Just don't forget about that, and do mulch. A good 2 to 4 inches of mulch on that tree.
I think I've said this before, but something I've come across in my study of trees is that there are some people who actually conceptually think of the season, the perennial season in particular, but in general, starting in the fall because it's the
Mm-hmm.
point. It's the point where seeds are produced.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Mhm.
point where if you think about you're going to go on a trip. Well, does the trip begin when you get there and have fun, or does the trip sort of start when you're packing and preparing and gathering all the things you're going to need for that trip to be
Mm-hmm.
successful? Where a lot of that process of storage, both within the vascular tissue and within the roots, happens in the fall for
Mm-hmm.
these plants. And, Alexis, you were talking about that. We think of, because we see the above ground stuff,
Mm-hmm.
this big
Hmm.
flush out of leaves and stuff, and then the pulling back of leaves. In reality, if you could kind of see up and, below ground and above ground, it's almost like this push and pull
Mm-hmm.
bellows kind of thing where it's taking the
Mhm.
energy from the roots to build those leaves, photosynthesizing and putting the energy back. And so it's this kind of flow back and forth. And so fall's a really cool time of year. And I know for me, I feel like almost more of a rebirth feeling in
Oh
the
yeah.
fall than I do in the
Hmm.
spring.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I completely agree. For me, like my brain is fall is the beginning of my season. I think I've said that
Mhm.
before, but like even and I mean I do a lot of like quote unquote cool flowers. I mean they're cool, but they're also cold weather
People
flowers
have been
that
saying that.
Mhm.
they're not going to
They're
bloom
so
until
cool.
May
The reviews
anyways.
are
And
in.
so but and then all like I do big plantings in the fall, perennials, all that kind of stuff. So bulbs, corms, tubers, all that jazz, which we could talk about. So even though I do put a lot of plants in, around Mother's Day, I feel like my season really begins because I'm getting my seeds and I'm going to be starting them. I'm getting everything prepped. Like fall is to me a beginning of a season. And it's kind of nice because it's almost like you're starting with a blank slate in fall, which is very like exciting to me. And I can let everything go that sucked, that I didn't do well at,
Hmm.
take good notes on what I did do well or whatever, and then start fresh. And that's what fall feels like to me. And it's very invigorating. And it's not hot as hell outside.
Right,
So it's
right.
just like very invigorating
And
for
I'm a strange one. I love like landscape bed cleanup when I'm blowing out all of the refuse and if I'm swapping mulch, not, which I don't do, but every 3 or 4 years, I try not to let the mulch build up. But just when I'm blowing out beds, and I've already by this time of year, I'm already done with all of my pruning, my late summer pruning, because I don't want to deharden the plants this late in the season. But I enjoy doing all of that stuff. I mean, when I go to like, clean up Himmercalis or daylilies and all that stuff, I just have always enjoyed that. And that's a flip time for me where I'm just kind of cleaning up, putting to bed, getting ready for spring. But now I say all of that, but one thing I'm never good at, I guess because I don't plan far enough ahead in my own home landscape, is I'm just not good at putting in the spring. I always forget to put in the spring flowering bulbs now. I know, and I
oh my
love mass
gosh.
plantings,
I
just
just
big
got
mounds of beautiful flowers, but I'm
so many
terrible.
bulbs and like
I
yesterday,
could
and they're
if you could
coming
see
more
her
coming
eyes light up
in.
now,
Oh my
it's
gosh,
yeah,
my arms are flailing. I'm so
yeah,
excited.
the
How
Italian comes
many how
out.
many bulbs would you get?
Many
Well,
pounds of bulbs.
Grant, remember this is like my third season of putting in bulbs, so it's not nearly as many as I bought like the first 2 years. But yesterday I got 100 narcissus and some fritillaria, like the big fancy fritillaria. If you've never, okay, listen, if you don't know what fritillaria is, I want you to look at your phone that you're probably listening to this on, and I want you to Google it. There are so many different kinds. I'm amazed that they're all called fritillaria because they look so different. They're super cool. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're fun. So, anyways, I got some of those. I got 100 of a daffodil that I didn't have, and then I've got about a
Daffodils are
hundred
fun.
peonies coming in
Mhm.
and
Did you do any wild tulips?
amaryllis.
Just
Huh?
curious. Wild tulips?
I don't
The
do
not
wild tulips. I've
the
got
botanical tulips. Do you do anything with those?
Oh
Just
yeah, I've
curious.
got I think 1,500 tulips coming, which is like
Yeah. Is it
not
the,
that
Wow.
like,
much,
regular
but
tulips or
Good
the other
lord.
type of tulip? I'm just curious. I'm starting to see some wild tulips or what's called botanical tulips show up now,
oh,
and I've always loved those,
I don't
but,
think I know what those are. Like what are
look them up.
It's
They're
the
amazing.
Latin is Dua Lipa.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I like it. I like it. It's got a dubstep kinda beat to it. I
uh,
like it. But no, I
botanical?
thought that you would be into those, and, they went out of style for a long time, but they're great to put in this time of
Oh,
year
you're talking
too.
like an old-fashioned tulip. That's what I call them.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
what
the
people call I don't know why they're called botanical tulips,
I'm
but
like
they're
What we call
unapproved
those
wild
have
tulips.
been
tulips. Yes. We
Not
didn't
one of your
realize.
newfangled
Not
tulips.
one of your fancy cultivars, your
yeah,
cultivated varieties of tulips, but no.
parrots and yeah,
No,
no,
you've
those
got a
are
lot of fun stuff, it sounds like, which I would expect from you, Alexis. You
I
have lots of great stuff.
mean,
What else
obviously.
you were expanding on your list before I derailed you with my wild tulip comment?
Peonies. It's
Mhm.
good time. It's a great time to plant peonies. If you have
Mhm.
peonies, actually, this week reminds me I need to split some. So if you've got a peony that maybe has been dying out or just not blooming very well the past couple years, iris are another one. You can
Mhm.
divide those this time of year, share that with your friends, move it around. It's a great time to do that. Get you a nice shovel out there and just pop that baby across, and you will freak out, and it's okay. It'll be fine. So that's a that perennial planting, and then I've got corms, ranunculus, and anemone corms, as well as just snapdragons in general, like plug cool weather annuals that are going in. But it's a good time to be planting. So if you really love spring flowers, you like having that, hellebores, things like that in the spring when we're all
Now's the
kind of
time.
in need of color. Now is the time.
What do you
And
consider your zone for planting those, Alexis? I have heard from now through, like, Thanksgiving. Is that right?
so for it depends on what it is. So something that's
Specifically?
super,
Yeah.
yeah, it depends on what it is. So something that's really cold hardy, which is going to be like your tulips, your narcissus, anything that'll essentially take a freeze.
Mhm.
I mean, you can plant those until the ground is frozen. So
Mhm.
sometimes that's like January, as long as they're kept cold because they need those cooling periods. Actually, I spent a lot of time yesterday learning about what individual species of tulips needed how many cooling weeks and how many days to force bloom and all that kind of stuff. For some of your other things, your cool annuals, a lot of them don't want to freeze solid. Like they'll take cold temps if they've got some remay or
So some
cover on
mulch
them.
maybe over some of these? Do you mulch any of those tenders?
I'm growing in a high tunnel situation. Those
It's a
more tender
little different,
things,
sure.
yeah, so it's a little bit different. If you're planting them at home, like anemones, ranunculus, you can plant those at home. You can do them in pots and put them in your garage. You can also plant them like in a landscape up against like a brick house or something. They usually will do okay. And then mulch would be good for those. And just be aware that they're probably not going to show any signs of life until February.
Mhm.
So make some sort of like notation so that you know where they are and you don't weed them out, and then you should get blooms probably mid to late April on those if they're just kind of planted out and left to fend for themselves, which is a nice time of year.
I guess we should back up for homeowners out there. I know commercial scenarios are a bit different, but for homeowners, maybe we could just take a second to talk about bed prep and the general
Mm,
soil conditions that are best for the fall planted bulbs. Because in there a set of conditions where they're going to do better and you're going to ensure better success? I mean, what's your process when you're preparing an area for these
yeah.
things?
Well,
Fertility, soil structure, drainage, everything.
like
What's your
we
deal?
talked about for garlic, drainage is key. Like
Mm,
water will rot your bulbs faster than anything else. And then as far as like nutrients go, from a lot of these things, we're treating them more like annuals. So like
mhm,
tulips are an example. I really tell people act like they're an annual. If they come back and bloom
Mhm.
the next year, cool. But
Right.
if you want tulips from year to year, plan on planting new ones.
I've
And
seen
so,
tulips in just perfect beds go up to like 3 to 4 years, but that seems really rare.
yeah, and it depends on the kind of. So I think the ones you were
Yes.
talking about, those kind of old fashioned botanical ones,
Mhm.
do usually do better. But we tend to, in this zone that we're in Kentucky, not have the
An
best of
annual.
luck with them
Yeah.
returning just because we don't get cold enough.
Are you fertilizing when you are preparing beds, if it's a new bed for, the fall plants?
I don't do tulips. I don't do anything I'm going to treat as an annual because that bulb is a storage structure for nutrients.
The nutrient
So
structure?
everything pretty
Mhm.
much it needs is right in there. As long as your pH isn't like really wonky one way or the other, if it's relatively close to
6 to
neutral,
7-ish.
yeah, you'll be fine. And but like daffodils, which is something that's going to come back, that narcissus
Little
year
heavier
after year,
feeders.
you're going to amend. If you're doing, anemones, ranunculus, or any of those annuals that are, really really quick, they do need some fertilizer
You do
nutrients
like a
added.
pre-plant, like broadcast over an area, just like a general 10-10-10
Yeah, for the
pre-plant?
homeowner,
Yeah.
that
For
would
homeowners,
a
yeah,
slow
yeah.
release is usually plenty.
Okay.
Mhm.
Get that soil test, see how things are
Use,
looking.
you guys recommend or have you used personally like bone meal? I see that recommended a lot as a general nutrient source in the planting hole sometimes. Just depends on
Yeah,
what you're doing.
yeah, bone meal
Yeah.
is pretty safe to use. It's
Yeah.
not going to burn like you would something like a even Osmocote. I won't like put right in the hole because it can burn.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Anything
also
like
get
that.
lots of questions on like depth. Doesn't that kind of depend on the what you're putting in the ground? Like a tulip's going to be a little bit different than like a grape hyacinth.
Rule of thumb, kind of same with seeds, is twice as deep as the bulb is tall. So
Mhm.
take like the maximum height
Yeah.
of a bulb and twice as deep.
4 to 7, 4 to 8 inches, something like
Mhm,
that. The bigger the bulb, the deeper you can go with it, it
mhm.
sounds like.
Unless you're
Are
doing
fritillaria bulbs really as big as this picture I'm
We'll have
looking
to look
at?
them
so
up.
yeah, some of them I literally like just transplanted some out of an
Hmm.
area the other day, and I mean it's a softball, like it's the
Right,
size of a
Oh,
that's
softball.
wow.
crazy
Yeah.
town.
How
Hmm.
deep is that when you're pulling that up? How deep are they in the ground?
About
Just
two
curious.
softballs.
Two
2
softballs deep.
softballs deep. There you go, 2
Those
times.
those actually weren't that full double. I'd
Mhm.
say like they were kind of just under the soil surface because that bulb is so big that like in
Yeah.
order to
Mhm.
get that basal plate, which is where the roots are going to come out of, it's
Mhm.
the bottom of the bulb. In
Mm.
order to get it deep enough that it's going to have plenty of soil to use, you don't necessarily have to plant that deep, but you certainly could, and it would be fine.
Mhm.
I just kind of like, I don't know, shove my soil knife down in there, and I'm like, that's about right, and I
You
pop it.
and your hori knife, does it have the gradients on there, or you
Yeah,
just kinda
six
know? I know
inches.
you know by
Yeah,
feel, yeah.
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 Speaking,
And,
speaking
how
as
about
a oops,
follow-up fertilizer? As far as in the spring, are you putting fertilizer a second application on anything in the spring as new growth
I
begins? I've seen it
really,
done both ways
yeah, I
effectively.
really don't. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that you shouldn't, but I have my soil's just pretty high in nutrient level,
Yeah.
and I overdoing nitrogen can hurt your blooms. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
It's hard with some of these to go wrong as long as, you mentioned, as long as the drainage is good, it's hard to go wrong. We're pretty fortunate in this area, particularly in the central part of the state with pretty fertile soils. So, yeah, it seems like they have a pretty good tolerance as long as your pH, like you said, is not anything crazy high or low.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
as far as from a homeowner perspective on how I've done stuff in the past, something that I've done, I don't necessarily do a big block of all one type of plant. So there's not,
Mhm.
necessarily straight rows or that kind of thing. I'll prep a big kind of I don't know, 4x4 or 4x8 area and kind of dig it out more or less to the depth that I'm working with, and then arrange a bunch of different bulbs in it and to kind of lay out what it's going to look like, where I want, taller stuff, and pay attention to the height and the
Mhm.
bloom pattern and stuff like that. And then fill the whole thing back in and kind of plant it that way as just a way of, if I knew exactly where I wanted things to go, I could just dig a hole and put it in there. But that
Mhm.
allows me a little bit of a
Like a
reconfiguring
palette or
opportunity.
Yeah.
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 And I've seen some pretty interesting planting techniques by professionals, and I think it was at the Cincinnati
Oh
Botanical
man.
Gardens,
Yeah.
but they double stack their bulbs. The
Mhm.
larger bulbs go 8 inches, the more shallow bulbs, and they knew the bloom period, of course, they were stacked on top of
Mhm.
at 4-inch depth on top of the ones that they had just planted, with phenomenal results, and it was
Lasagna
so beautiful.
bulbs.
Yeah, I mean, and I was so into that when I saw that bloom, and then they described the technique, and I thought that was really cool. So I am anxious to try that sometime, probably this fall. I'm gonna see what I can I think they call it double stacking, but what
I've
did you
s
call it, Alexis?
I call it, like, lasagna bulbs
Okay.
because I've
Have you
seen it
tried
done.
that? I'm just real curious about that method. I've never
There's
done that.
a lot of cut flower growers who are trying to, right, extend their season into winter, and so one way they're doing that is with these lasagna containers of bulb gardens. And so you plant your biggest bulb, which is usually in this case, is often your latest blooming bulb in the bottom of the pot. And then you go up a couple inches and you plant the next smallest bulb, which,
That's awesome.
so it's like tulips are in the bottom.
Hmm.
Then you'll do daffodils. Then you'll go up and do hyacinths. And then you've got muscari, which is grape hyacinth
Mhm.
on top. And so they'll and you just kind of like stagger who's on top of who, so nobody's like really, pushing on anyone, and it blooms. It's the coolest thing to see. It's like
Yeah,
a
those
full
are
garden
beautiful
in a
beds. I mean, it
container.
was
Yeah.
phenomenal, and so that's in containers also, is what you're
Yeah.
saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's really
That's
neat.
really cool. I guess the next question I have, I get a lot on, like, fall planted bulbs. When you fast forward that in your mind as far
Mhm.
as placement, let's think about landscape bed versus in your lawn area somewheres, and you guys probably know where I'm going with this. Aren't certain types of bulbs, aren't they better for if you're gonna put things in a lawn area that are gonna be perennial possibly?
Like
That
crocus or something.
Yes, and some people, they wonder, they see crocus in a lawn and it does fairly well, so they apply that logic to the later growing bulbs, and they don't do so well.
And like
I mean,
naturalizing an area.
yeah, and it's your mowing patterns more than
Mhm.
anything. If you put your, late growing bulbs that break dormancy late, what you're gonna have to do is actually not mow those off if you want them to be perennials and act like
Mhm.
perennials, because 'cause you're mowing off the energy factory, the leaves. Just kinda keep that in mind. Your really early plants, like your crocuses, tend to do better in scenarios like that because by the time you mow them, it's not gonna have such a big impact on the
Mhm.
plant, but you can't apply that logic to everything as far as placement of bulbs. Some bulbs, to me, just do better and should be kept in the landscape beds,
Mhm.
and some can actually be effective. What else could have I seen out in lawns? I mean, I've seen little things that they're typically not planted, like star Bethlehem, which is
Mhm.
considered a weed in some cases,
It
but
Occasional
can
things that are
daffodil.
also
growing. What's that,
rot.
Brett?
Occasional daffodil.
Yeah. Oh,
I've
yeah.
seen some
Yeah.
of those kind of mixed in, but they're hit and miss, I think.
Yeah, and those I try to mow around. I have some of those down by my little garden area, and I try to mow around to at least let them make a little bit more energy because sometimes they get into my mowing season. But
Mhm.
there's the smaller daffodils I've noticed they work
Uh-huh.
better. They work more like a crocus. Yeah.
Yeah, they're more of like I think they're like botanically more like a paper white, which is
Mhm.
paper whites. Everybody thinks of them as Christmas, and there are paper
Yeah.
whites that are not hardy, but they are a narcissus,
What am I thinking? The Glory of Snow and the
the
Dwarf Iris,
leucogyme
both of
and the
those are
dwarf iris.
super
Yeah,
early.
yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you call it? Glory of the Snow? What you
Yeah,
called it?
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Luca Jim. I don't know if I
It
pronounced that
is.
right.
Mhm,
It
yeah.
and
If there
it's
are
a
people out there who are interested in, so our house, we have, I would say 90% of what was once lawn is now not lawn. It's
mhm.
landscaping and other things. And I always get uncomfortable when people say that it makes them feel bad or negative or in any way about themselves, but there is something cool about doing
But you
that.
should
And
feel bad.
some people, well, yeah, I don't want anybody to feel
Just kidding. I
ashamed.
have a lot of lawn.
Yeah, as a growing up Catholic, I can say that shame doesn't always produce outcomes of action. It just sort of stew in it.
Flagellation is much
Right?
better.
Not that we have a corner on the market, but we are very good at it. But yeah, if you are interested, you don't have to go, and we didn't go wholesale. One year you have lawn, the next year you have landscape. You can do it. I think of it as literally like biting big chunks out of the lawn,
Mhm.
and so put in a little, and it kind of has a cool effect over time because it
Yeah.
creates these little like pads of
Vignettes and
Mhm.
stuff.
landscaping that expand outward, and you can kind of redo them, or you can let them rock. But one good way to do that is if you have some landscaping now that's not grass, add a little chunk on the outside of it, a little circle or something or a square or whatever. You could put stones around it or do whatever you want to do, and put some bulbs in there.
Mhm.
Let that go, mulch it heavily, let that go for a year. You can decide if you want to add more bulbs or if you want to do something different, and then the next year add another one. And I'm talking like 3 feet by 3 feet. If you
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
just want to go, and you would be shocked how after a couple of seasons and you start liking it, that's exactly how we've done it. Is
And you're trying
Mhm.
to stick with, like, things that perennialize or come back year after year after
it
year?
depends. It depends on what
Yeah.
you like. We have sections
Mhm.
of ours that we do more annual. We have sections that are a kind of a wildflower seed bed that's been established. So there's some biennials and other stuff that comes up and reseeds.
You've got like an herb section.
And if you start from a place where you have pretty decent control over the weeds and expand outward from that and kind of just
Mhm.
Mhm.
fight the weeds and the grass back over time, it's a way more enjoyable process, I'll
Mhm.
say, than
Sure.
trying
It's
to
not
just
so
like convert
overwhelming.
way too
Yeah.
much into
Tons of work.
weeds. And I mean, trying to turn way too much from sod into
Mhm.
plants or whatever. But bulbs have always been, well, not just bulbs, some corms and some tubers as well have always been a part of our strategy in doing that. And
Mhm.
I'd be curious, Alexis, if you could just give us a quick rundown of the differences between those things and maybe some examples. Bulbs, corms, and tumors. And tubers. It's
Mhm.
not a tuba.
It's not sure.
It's just because, not that it's a little bit academic to some extent, but it's also
No,
Is it
but
a
cool.
it's a difference on how
distinction
you're
without a
dividing them.
difference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a practical aspect to all that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you'll sound super smart when you talk to people. So, a bulb is essentially like if you think about most of us have seen like a tulip bulb, but tulips, daffodils, hyacinths, those are all bulbs. A lot of the time, they have a paper like covering that's going to be
Mhm.
on them that you can remove. But I usually tell people don't. Like, there's no need to. But if it comes off, it's not a big deal. And that bulb consists of the flower, like parts of the flower, and leaves down in there. So a lot of time you can think kind of like an onion, right? Like an onion has those scales. Those
Mhm.
are modified leaves. It's sort of kind of like that in a tulip. And so if you were to cut a tulip in half, you would see some of those like scales, which end up being the leaves. And you're also going to see the pieces of the flower that are very, very immature at the time, but that you can tell that they are just an immature flower. So that's all talked down into a bulb. And then a corm is very similar. It's a storage, what's the word I'm looking for?
Storage structure.
Storage structure. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so there are not visible rings when you cut into that one like you would with a bulb. And so a corm would be something like a gladiola, crocus, ranunculus, anemones, all are corms, and they don't all look the same. So corm is, I always feel like if it doesn't look like an obvious bulb, it's probably a corm because they can kind of come in different shapes. And so they have they're more of a storage structure, and you're not going to see those same floral and leaf things down in there. And then a tuber is different from both of those. Caladiums are example of a tuber, and then of course a potato is, and it is a modified root structure. And so you get shoots and stems that come out of that, and then those are what form your floral pieces. Dahlias are even they're a tuberous root, which is yet another different weird structure. And then you've got like rhizomes and stolons, which is more like irises.
Mhm.
And you jump into all of those. But most of the time, when we talk about winter planted bulbs, we talk about corms and bulbs. And we kind of lump those all together. Like, if you call a ranunculus a bulb, nobody's going to be mad. We're going to know that you don't listen to the podcast, but we're not going to be mad.
And just a quick note, you can tell if the flower is immature if it laughs when you say stamen and pistil.
Yes. The sexual reproduction jokes just
So-
never end.
So, did you touch on or maybe reinforce some of the Ray? You mentioned the practical implications of the different types with
Yeah,
terms of
Alexis,
dividing.
like by division or just going out and chopping things up with a shovel. I mean, are we talking iris here, or what kind of practical impact does this have as people are dividing these things, going through division processes?
So I would say the easiest and most bang for your buck comes from when you divide a tuberous root. So that's that dahlia or even peony, or you divide, or you like take cuttings from like a tuber or those rhizomes that we talked about, because essentially you are taking one giant plant and you're dividing it into a couple smaller
Like
plants,
clones,
clones of
essentially,
them.
yeah.
Exactly, they're clones of themselves, and you're going to get more of an instant impact out of that. So bulbs and corms will produce as well, but the difference here is that most of the time, like when you go buy ranunculus or you go buy tulips or gladiolus at the store, those bulbs that you're buying at the store, those bulbs and corms, are specifically have been treated to sell as a bulb and a corm. And what I mean by that is that most of the time the flowers have been cut off early in the season so that that plant focuses on developing that underground structure and less on the flower. So if you bring that gladiola corm home and you plant it and you let it bloom, it's going to take a lot longer time for you to get more gladiola corms. It does happen. They're called like corms are called the little minis that form on them. The future corms are called cormels, and then on bulbs they're called bulblets, and they literally look like
Who
tiny
made up all these
little
Little
cute
bulbous.
names?
Bulblet?
Is
Little
it real?
Oh
bulblets.
my gosh!
They're very cute.
Super
They
cute.
are.
bulblets.
So if you've ever gotten a tulip and you see what looks like a tiny little, dewdrop coming off of it, looks like a little tiny mini bulb, that's a bulblet. And eventually that would be big enough to form a bulb, but you would be sacrificing the bloom in order to get it to that stage. So most of us are not going to do that, and we just let things happen over time. So I usually don't tell people to plan on getting more bulbs or corms, right? You can dig those up if you want and move them and plant them somewhere else, but you're not going to get, double the amount from year to year. But your your peonies, your more herbaceous things, dahlias, things like that, those you can divide with abandon.
And they benefit for
Mhm.
dividing them every so often, don't they?
They
I
get
mean, these
crowded,
things,
man. They
they
don't
get
like to
crowded.
be
You look
crowded.
down on some of these irises and things, you see no soil. You just see the
Mhm.
tops of plant parts bulging
Mhm.
out of the ground. Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you
so they seem to benefit from that.
if you're not sure if something needs to be divided or moved, and this is also true with like things like your daffodils, if you see like the inner ring is dying out and so you kind of
Mm.
almost have this circle of live stuff on the outside, that means that you need to divide. It's getting too crowded. Yeah, fun fact.
Is there? I mean, is there? This is a little off. It's not really off topic, but is there like a? Is this just because these are cultivars? These are things that have been bred for this particular thing. I'm just imagining like, is there some sort of natural cycle that would like induce that or need like I mean how,
The
Yeah, like
dieback?
no, the dividing, like the
Mm.
process of the dividing needing to be needing to be
Mhm.
divided,
it
like
seems like a reproductive strategy for an area that's getting like heavily disturbed, right?
Yeah, and I believe the reason one of the reasons we want to divide things is our ornamental expectations are a little higher than Mother Nature's,
sure.
and then
Mhm.
I often wondered about that, Brett. That's a great point because I think that we know what that plant looks like at its peak, performance, and we want to keep it performing, because we value it for the way that it looks, its ornamental value. And I think that's one of the things. Now, I guess in nature, yeah, like Josh was saying, where you're leading to the fact that the way it spreads or creeps, or, when you talk about rhizomes and stolons and things, and these mechanisms that plants have of outward expansion. But for me, like irises, like Alexis was saying, yeah, it's just, I want them to all look really nice and really uniform. And the only way I know to do that is to give them space and divide them. So each section of plant, each clone is performing at its peak.
All right. I mean, if you think about it, right, there are these storage structures that are like really starchy. So it's
Mhm.
animals digging them up and
Mhm.
tearing them apart, and pieces are
Mm-hmm.
being left that can reproduce the plant.
Exactly. Yeah, like
Starfish effect. Yeah.
dahlias are
Right.
edible. And yeah, I mean, if you can cut a dahlia tuber in half if you wanted, and as long as there's an eye on there, similar to a potato, it'll grow, and it'll form roots, and it'll be fine. And rhizomes are a modified root structure, and so they can pretty much just be moved and dug up and put anywhere. So I would say it's just that expansion part of it,
Hmm.
but.
How about when folks go at their local, place of purchase, box store or nursery, and go to purchase bulbs? What should they be looking for? Because not all bulbs are created equal. I mean, things can happen in shipping and stuff. What are folks looking for when they're selecting and purchasing bulbs?
Based on what Josh just said, I might do a taste test next
You
time.
Yeah,
you
take a
might have
big
to.
bite.
Easy
Hmm.
people choose Jif
Very
or
We
whatever.
are
starchy.
not telling
Ooh,
you to eat any of these
starchy.
No,
bulbs.
no.
But you're telling me personally, just not our audience.
Yeah, just not
Yeah.
the
Right,
audience.
right.
Thank
Brett,
you.
you can
Okay
eat
for
whatever
Brett, but not
poisonous things
anyone
you want.
else.
They
If
make
it
me
gives you
gladiolus.
if it
Mm-mm.
gives you acid reflux, it was a good bulb.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say look for ones that like visually, if you can't touch them, because sometimes they're in boxes and there's like a
Yeah,
little clear
that's
window, so you
tough.
can't necessarily touch them. Look to see if there's any like mold growth on them. You don't want anything
Mm.
with mold growth that's going to be you know pythium or different stuff like that. So you don't want any fuzzy green, white, anything like that on there. If you can like physically handle the bulbs, you want them to be like heavy and full. So if you can just think about like garlic as well. If you've ever gotten garlic and some of them are it's like there's nothing in there. It's like there's nothing in the
Hmm.
shell, so to speak. You don't
Right.
want that with bulb. You want them to be nice and lush and
But not
full.
moist, I'm guessing. I'm guessing mushy is not a good
Mushy
thing.
is
Is it?
not a good
Yeah.
thing.
And
No.
and it's
Gross.
really
Ugh.
tough for me when I
Bulbs
see things are
rotting.
in a
Ugh.
box. I wanna see 'em. I
Mhm.
love the
Oh,
little, like,
I straight
onion
up open the
sacks.
boxes. I'm not
Yeah.
telling you to do that, but I'm telling you what I do.
I have been instructed not to open the
Do as I say,
boxes.
not
I
as I
open the
do. Yeah.
boxes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
open the
Sometimes
boxes.
if they're really bad, you can smell them. I think that was what you
Mhm.
were
Uh-huh.
getting at, Alexis, right?
Ugh.
It smells
Yeah.
very distinct.
It is
Heavy on the
grody.
stink.
Have you ever like lost some potatoes in your house and they've
Oh
Dead
gotten
man
man.
rotten?
smell. Yeah.
Oh,
It
that's a
is
good one.
it is the worst smell.
Mhm.
Mm.
I remember when I like lived on my own, I first moved to Danville. I forgot about this weird little cabinet in this apartment and I put my bag of potatoes down in there and
Mhm.
could
A whole
not for
bag.
like 2 weeks was like, "What is that smell?" It was like death. I mean, it was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
worst, could not figure it out. And then finally, I just started opening everything. I was like, it's in this kitchen somewhere. And I opened every single one. And I finally found this weird little cabinet off to the side and opened it up. And I almost vomited on the spot. And there were like
Yeah, yeah.
maggots everywhere. Ugh, it was so
Yeah, no,
gross.
they're bad. That reminds me of like, if you hand dig potatoes, there's like the seed potato down
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
And like, so you're digging and you're grabbing potatoes, they're all like healthy and nice. And then you hit the seed potato and it just like pops.
Uh huh.
And it's just like soup inside.
Mm
It's a
Oh,
good, it's
yeah.
a good
That's
Yeah.
bad.
smell to be on your
Absolutely.
hands and knees.
In
You
adult,
not only
yeah.
smell it, but you're marinated in it.
We do
It's
that. I do
great.
that with dahlias, like the mother tuber is what
Mhm.
it's called, and sometimes it's just it's gross, and it's usually cold and wet when you're digging dahlias, and you're like,
Oh, nice.
and you're muddy,
It
and it
adds to the
just
ambiance.
it's miserable. It's so
Now,
miserable.
When
one
you
other
first
thing I want to.
when you
Oh
first
yeah, go
started
ahead,
saying
Brett.
that, I thought you were setting up for like your tales as a pioneer from the frontier when the family would gather around and play hide the potato, and
It was a
occasionally
game we used to
mother
play.
would do too good of
No.
a job, and
Right.
And
We
one,
hide it in the wall cavity and brick it up.
instead
The
of
one
Easter egg
game
hunts,
where
we had
everybody
find
loses.
Yes,
find the
nobody
just
rotten
wins
lost
that
a
potato.
game.
potato in your house. I was like, oh, yeah.
Now we're having all this discussion on like fall planted things, but I want to ask you guys and bring this up, and it's going to invoke anger in a certain amount of listeners. But that, with the interface between all of these fall planted plant materials and squirrels and voles and things like that, is there any way to protect these things from critters that would like to dig them up and eat them or otherwise destroy your hard work? Do you guys have any secret
I got my
rest?
22 under the bed.
Okay, well, that certainly is an option, I suppose.
I'm just
And like
kidding.
a nice
Okay.
warm sleeping bag for sleeping out in the field.
Yeah, a pack of hungry, distraught cats
Well,
chained up
I
over the
have a
bed.
pack of cats.
I
Yes, I
am
do.
Okay, well that's
very
actually a good point. Yeah.
I'm very excited because when I was out for a nice walk the other morning or evening,
Sometime during the
Whenever it
day.
was,
At some point in recent history.
the past 4 weeks.
one of my neighbors had decided to jettison their supply of chicken wire, and they also
Oh,
had some
nice.
Oh
hardware
my
cloth.
goodness! Yes,
But
Nice.
I was
yes.
only able to carry one, so I grabbed the chicken wire. It was morning because I was going to go back in the evening, and the hardware cloth was gone. Darn
Oh,
it!
yeah.
Oh,
But
Yeah, I would have grabbed that.
spreading it out to all the people. But
Gross.
and you just use that, I guess, Brett.
so I put, when I was talking earlier a little bit about I dig out an area, 3x8 or 4x8 or whatever size I'm planting. Put the bulbs in, put the soil, kind of pack it nicely so that there's good soil to bulb contact. And then once I'm like at the soil level, I take and put some chicken wire down and kind of pin it over there,
Mhm.
and then put mulch on top of that. And we did have I don't know, $400 worth of bulbs completely eaten and
Yeah.
taken up by
Oh
squirrels a couple
gosh.
years
Yeah.
ago. And so that has worked for us, at
Do
least
you
in
leave
our.
that down and just let the plant material grow through that, or
I
do you
do.
take it up, or you leave it down? Gotcha.
Yeah, and the
Gotcha.
chicken wire is the holes. It's not like
Mhm.
the smallest chicken wire. It's
Kinda
got
like
like
the
a
Mhm.
hardware
decent.
cloth or some of
Right,
the tiny, tiny little openings in some wire. Gotcha.
right,
Gotcha.
and that's been how we've done it. And so
Awesome.
if you're doing an annual thing, you are going to have to pull it up and plant under it and then put it back down. But it is well worth it. And the number of people in our neighborhood who tell us how happy our spring flowers make them is like always like
Aw.
shocking and like catches me off
Reinforcement,
guard.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, this is definitely worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, the squirrels can do an enormous amount of damage in a
Oh,
short
Yeah.
amount of time. $400, wow, and that just totally, I could see that over just probably not that long of a period of time. They could really do some
Yeah.
damage. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, it's pretty wild. So great, great tip there. I love it. I
I don't know.
love it.
Has anybody ever done that?
Just the
Mhm.
different types of wire and things, but that's a good point, Brett. The good thing about chicken wire is it's big enough to where most things can go around it and it doesn't hinder
Yeah.
anything. I've seen some people put things down that are so fine they do a good job, but then they have to pull that up before spring
Mhm.
growth begins if it's tiny little openings and whatever,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like a tiny mesh. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely didn't want it to grow up and then like girdle it
Oh
and kill
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It worked.
But
It worked. It's worked great the last two
it's
years for us.
invisible. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's
hidden under
under your
mulch.
mulch. Yep.
Yeah, cool, nice. Thank you.
I have a pack of cats.
Oh.
Mhm.
And you have some
Go cat.
corgis. Do corgis go after any little creatures in the
It
ground or running
seems like
around?
they should,
Have I
but maybe they're
told
not
you
quick
all
enough.
this story before about that
I
that
The
don't think
readers
so.
haven't
experience?
heard it, I bet. Readers,
So
listeners,
so corgis are herding
readers.
dogs, right? So I really don't
Mm.
expect them to be like little hunters. I have a friend who has a pack of wiener dogs that I need to have come
Oh,
over,
yeah,
but
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I'm afraid they would destroy too much just in vengeance.
Probably.
So I've talked about it before. I put silage tarps down on a lot of my stuff as I rotate things around. And there, when we were doing, I think I was starting a new bed, and I had the silage tarp down like all summer and pulled it up for fall planting. That's exactly what it
Mhm.
was for my perennials. And it was pretty big. It was like a 50 by 50 foot silage tarp, and so we pull it up, and we have voles, of course, on the farm. And so those of you who don't know, voles they're kind of like a field mouse, but they have short tails. But essentially, imagine it sort of like a field mouse. But they love to eat like the bark around your trees and your corms and all. I mean, they'll eat all of your bulbs and stuff like that. So I have 3 cats, and so they know when we pull the tarp up, those voles are going to be right
The toys are
underneath
coming
there.
out.
The toys are
Yeah.
coming out, and so they like hunt kind of together, and they wait on the outsides as we fold this tarp back. And my oldest corgi like doesn't know what he's doing, right? And he's like, "I'm a herd dog." And, like, just is so confused by what the cats are doing. But he just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And the cats kind of chased it to him, and he picked it up and swallowed the thing whole. And I was like, "Oh my god!"
Bones
Complete
and
panic,
all, bones and all.
complete panic. I mean, it was like I was like, "No!" And it was down, like it was in the
Yeah.
stomach before I could even get close. And
But a
that
part of you
was
had to enjoy him doing that because
I
that's
was
one
really
less
proud of
vole.
him. Yeah, I was
One
like,
less
well, at
vole.
least there's that. But then I was also like, this is going to be a rough
Terrified.
night.
How long did it take for you to take him to the vet? Did that
Oh no,
happen?
nothing happened.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't know
Good.
when it
Good.
Yeah,
came out,
Good.
dogs
but
are
I'm sure
crazy. Their
it did at some.
metabolism's messed
Well,
up.
yeah, but this dog is also allergic to chicken, so we didn't know what to expect.
Well,
But a
So
hairy
chicken is
vole, no
weird. It's
problem.
a
yeah,
After
it's a
that
bird.
vole, his coat was glistening, man.
he
He
was
looked
Yeah.
glossy. He
Glammed
actually
up.
caught another one on his like later that like the next year, kind of the same thing. The cats were working with him, but he like had figured it out at that point, and he did catch one, and he did put it down. And I was like, "Thank you," and I took it and got rid of it. But yeah, the cats actually are in the mornings. I can see them out in the fields like hunting. And I think that's what they're going after is the voles and the higher grass. So get you a
Hmm.
pack of cats and feed them, but maybe just like a little bit less. And they will take care of your squirrels.
Yeah.
Squirrels, voles, whatever.
Whatever.
Moles and voles. Oh my.
Well, I think that basically covers it. I mean, I could, for one, talk forever about bulbs and corms and talk to you about
And bulblets
days
and,
and
and
weeks,
cormels.
freezing weeks for tulips, each individual one, give you
Mm,
resources on that. I'm going to try and force some tulips for Valentine's Day this year. I'm probably going to fail miserably, but I'm going to give it a shot.
that's
And
the spirit.
all that
Yeah.
to say,
You've got it.
experiment, like bulbs
Mhm.
can be expensive, but you can buy some less expensive ones. Same with seeds, like in the grand scheme of things, they're not that expensive. So experiment, and you may be the person who's figured out something new
Yeah.
and cool. Plant your trees and shrubs, divide your peonies and your iris,
If you
mulch
want to
your
be
stuff.
inspired by tulips, check out the planting at
Mm,
the um,
Cincinnati
botanical
Zoo.
garden in Cincinnati. Yeah, or as
Hmm.
they like to say, Cincinnati Botanicals Garden and Zoo.
Just tanicles.
Yeah,
Tanicles.
but yeah, their planting is insane
They
when you
also have
see it in the
animals
spring.
there, but
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
animals, but it's no big deal. The
I mean,
plants are
this is
what
the Hort Culture
show you.
yeah.
podcast. We care
It is
about.
beautiful. Yeah. Josh, I agree. It's an amazing place to visit there in the spring. It is absolutely gorgeous there in the spring.
If
Mhm.
you want to hear a deeper dive on any particular type of flower, plant, etc., that we've covered, generally as categories today, let us know. We would be happy to do a tulips episode or a small shrubs episode or whatever you'll want to
Amaryllis.
hear. What's that?
Amaryllis. We should, when it gets closer to Christmas, briefly talk about amaryllis and how to like care for them
Mm,
after the holiday and stuff.
Mm.
We could talk about that if you want to do that. I don't know. This is a fun topic, and we hope that you all had fun with it. But yeah, if you've got anything more
yeah, we
specific,
just try to cover it broadly, and so if there's
Mhm.
something more
Yes.
specific that you want us
More
to
of an
hear, want us
introduction.
to talk about, we'd be very happy to do that.
And if you want to let us know, you can find us on Instagram, Hort Culture Podcast, and you can send us a direct message there or comment on a post if you would like to. We'd love to get that. You can also shoot us an email, hortculturepodcast at l.uky.edu. You can let us know through that. We've got some people who send us some emails, and we are grateful for them. They give us some great ideas and let us know what we're doing good at. And I guess what we're doing bad at, I don't know. They've so far been positive.
There probably isn't anything.
No,
You
no
can
room for
also
improvement here.
leave us a review, and you can put it in there if you would like to. We love that. It helps other people find us. It pleases the algorithm. So let us know where you're from in there as well if you want to shoot us a review on that. And maybe we'll figure out some cool stuff to talk that are both Kentucky and one of these other 14 countries relevant. Or, Ohio, Tennessee, you guys are welcome to. It's fine. So you can contact us there. We'd love to hear from you, and we really appreciate any feedback that you have. We hope that as we grow this podcast, you will grow with us. Join us next week. We're going to talk about a little bit of spooky stuff on the podcast, a little bit of plant lore for you. So thanks for being here. Have a great day. Have a great rest of your week.
Have a great time.